Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be doing a tag which I haven't done in a very long time, and that is the evolution of a reader tag. This tag was originally created by Spread Book Joy, which is a wonderful channel. I will link it down below, and I was tagged by Emily at Novel Novels, who is also wonderful, also linked below, and it's been a while since she tagged me, as usual with me and doing tags. In fact, I haven't done a book tag in a very long time. I just have had a lot of other videos I've been prioritizing, but I was really excited about this tag when I saw it, and when Emily tagged me, it just prompted me to want to do it even more, so I'm glad I'm finally getting around to it. There's just a few questions having to do with how I've changed as a reader over time, and we're just gonna get right into it. The first question is what you read, how has your taste in books evolved? And for this question, I would have to say, back in high school, I've mentioned this a lot on my channel, but back in high school, I was primarily reading fantasy, especially YA fantasy. I've read a couple of adult fantasy during that time, but not very much. It was definitely majority YA fantasy. But over time, in the past few years, you likely, if you've watched my channel, you know I read a lot more historical fiction and classics. That's primarily where my focus is, although I do throw some fantasy and other things in there periodically. And I'm actually pleased with that. I mean, I want to read more fantasy again, which is part of my goals for this year, is to get more fantasy back into my reading life because I do enjoy it when I read it still. But I remember growing up and always dreaming about being more of a classics reader, being able to understand them and just be able to say that I have read them. And I'm glad that I not only can say I've read a lot of these classics that are pretty popular, but also that I understood them and actually enjoyed them. I'm not just saying it just to say it. So yes, I like that, but like I said, I do want to get more fantasy back into my reading life, but I do think classics and historical fiction will continue to be the majority of my reading. Next is how you read. Has the format of your reading changed very much? And a little bit. When I was in high school, I definitely pretty much just physically read, and I did not do ebooks really. I've never really been into ebooks though, so that's something that has remained the same. I may in the future end up reading more on ebook, probably because I will eventually run low on Victorian novels that I have not read yet that are easy to access. So I'll probably have to turn to ebooks a little bit more for some of the Victorian literature that I'll want to read, and at that point I'll probably try to invest in a Kindle or Nook or something. I actually did in high school have a Kindle that I used sometimes, so maybe I did use it a little bit more than now, but not enough to like make a huge difference. But I actually read Pride and Prejudice for the first time on ebook, so there was that, I guess. But yeah, I've never really read ebooks. I usually read physically, and that's still the case, but I listen to a lot more audiobooks now than I used to. I have more access to them, so I'm able to do that a lot more, which really has boosted my reading life and made certain books even more enjoyable, and just I really love audiobooks, so I'm glad that that's been introduced more into my reading life. But over time, I've always read physically the most, and that's still the case. The third question I'm going to read directly off of my computer because it's long enough that I don't think I can memorize it to just say it to the camera. So the third question is, how much do you read? Do you read more or less than previously, and has how often you read changed? I definitely read a lot more than I used to, and I'm pleased with that. I know there's been a lot of people who end up kind of getting burnt out on reading with Booktube just because there's a lot more pressure involved, and I can totally understand that, but at least so far where I'm at right now, I have found that I like the feeling of being able to read more. There are maybe some moments where I wish I could read even more, but I usually don't let that affect me too much. I also definitely read more often. I think I'm just more aware of how much time I'm spending reading versus not. And sometimes that could make it feel like a chore, but most of the time it doesn't. It just makes it feel like my personal project, and I really get a lot of joy and fulfillment out of having personal projects. And since I don't really craft much or anything, I do want to get more into embroidery, but since I'm just not really into that, I feel like reading and Booktube and now my writing really allows me to have personal projects that I can work on in my free time that I enjoy, that feel like me and help me feel fulfilled things during that free time. I used to actually watch a lot more movies and TV shows. Now I really don't, because I use that time to read instead, which I actually think is a much better use of my time and more effective for my brain. There are days where I'm like, you know what, I just need to binge watch a show, and I do, but it's just a lot less regular than it used to be, and I think it's actually made me a lot happier because I'm using my brain and spending time on things that feel more productive, and then watching things, even though I do have a part of me that's like, man, there's so many shows I want to watch that people have talked about that I feel like I'll enjoy, but I just don't dedicate the time to it very much. So that is something I'd like to organize my time with as well, but also I just think there's just never enough time to do everything you want to do, unfortunately. So you just kind of do your best with what you're motivated to do. But yes, I definitely read a lot more often than I used to, a lot more regularly, because I'm replacing watch time with reading time, which has been great. Question 4 is, how has Booktube changed you as a reader? And I think specifically, well, first of all, it has inspired me to read a lot more, but even more in depth with that, it's kind of trained me to consider ways in which I can read more, to prioritize reading a little bit more, to also organize my reading. So like with big books, I end up trying to do audiobooks or split them up throughout the month, so I'm just reading a certain amount of pages a day, so it feels a lot more doable. And then it enables me to get through a lot more books because I'm more organized with it. I'm making things a little less intense and scary. So I feel like it's really been a benefit, at least so far, to my reading life. There's also many people on Booktube who have inspired me to read things that I maybe otherwise would not have even thought of picking up. For example, I'm reading Piranesi right now, and I don't know if I ever would have picked it up without watching Booktube. Possibly it could have come up somewhere in my life, but in my real life, I've never heard anybody talk about it. I've seen it at Barnes & Noble, obviously, on tables, so maybe I would have been drawn to that, but I don't know. Based on the synopsis, if I just read it, I don't know that I would necessarily be drawn to reading it, but the way people talk about it on Booktube has really inspired me to want to read it, and I am loving it already. It's probably going to be a favorite of the year unless the ending disappoints me, which I highly doubt based on what people have said. So like things like that become new favorites that I never would have probably even been aware of without Booktube. Additionally, just being involved in like group reads, buddy reads, readathons just is really fun to be part of a community and feel like I can talk about these books that I'm loving with people who are actually gonna care and understand. Even just making videos in general, it allows me to discuss books with people that I know are willing to listen, and many of them will have read the books I'm talking about and be able to give their 2 cents about them. And that's just a nice feeling, because I can talk to people in real life about what books I'm reading, they'll even ask, but it just doesn't feel the same when you're talking to someone who you know has never read the book, who's not maybe as big of a reader as you, and they just don't get it. And so like they'll act happy for you and be kind and stuff, but it's just not the same as when you're discussing with people who actually are equally excited with you and interested. So yeah, I really like that aspect of it as well, and it's just changed the way I approach reading and what I look for in books, really deeply thinking about books a little bit more than I used to, and the writing style and things like that, and it just makes reading even more enjoyable and fulfilling. And the final question is to tag some people, of course, and I don't think I'm going to tag anyone. I just took a couple minutes to kind of browse through, and part of the issue I think sometimes with tagging for me is there's some people that I really love watching, but I'm not always the best at commenting on videos. I try to comment regularly enough, especially when I actually have something to say, but often I listen to Booktube videos while I'm at work and just kind of let them play down my watch later list, so I don't always have the chance to comment. And so there's channels I love and people I love that I watch often, but I don't know necessarily that they're subscribed to me or watch me because, yeah, there's not really much interaction. So I'm like, I don't know who's watching who I could tag. Additionally, this tag has been going around, so I don't know who's already done it of the people that I have interacted with. So I'm just going to say, if you haven't done this tag and you want to do it, consider yourself tagged by me, and please let me know that you ended up doing it so I can make sure to watch it. It really is a fun tag, just reflecting on your reading life and just getting to know other people's process and evolution, and it's just been a great one to watch. So anyway, that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below your answers to some of these questions. How has Booktube, watching Booktube, being a part of it, changed your reading? reading, let me know, as I would just love to hear about it. And I will see you next time. Bye!